1,200 kilometers off the coast of Mexico lies a lost and little-known island, Clipperton, a tiny atoll whipped by winds and battered by Pacific breakers. Explorer Jean Louis Étienne set sail to discover this unique ecosystem. He and his family, along with an international team of scientists, will live on the island for 4 months. Within a few days, a small village springs up on the ring of coral. The 40 scientists get down to exploring the unique biodiversity of this special island, the island at the end of the world. Clipperton is an oasis in the vast blue sea, with no neighboring islands. The scientists who have set up camp beneath its palm trees hope to find a unique ecosystem under the water, an ecosystem with its own distinctive life forms and types of behavior. Distance and isolation normally favor the appearance of endemic species, that's to say, species which are unique, found in one place only, and nowhere else on Earth. The ocean seems empty, with only a few bottlenose dolphins swimming effortlessly among the plankton. Some of these organisms, on which the dolphins and the turtles feed, are semi-transparent and resemble the many plastic bags humans leave drifting in the ocean. For the dolphins and turtles, it's impossible to tell them apart. Thousands of creatures die every year because they have swallowed plastic bags which become lodged in their intestines. Life is concentrated around the reef, as if the fish were afraid of the great empty ocean and were drawn to the island by a magnetic attraction. Snappers, jacks, triggerfish, parrotfish, and the aptly named goatfish are the main underwater residents of the atoll. The most remarkable behavior observed by the biologists on Clipperton is that of moray eels swimming in open waters. These long, sinuous fish are more generally found living among the cracks and crevices of the rocky seabed, their jaws open wide to help them breathe, and constantly on the lookout for any unsuspecting prey. Voracious and feared by divers, they have no hesitation in eating others of their own kind. Two white-tipped sharks appear after 3 hours of exploration. In the miniature canyons of coral, surgeonfish seek shelter from the heavy ocean swell that breaks against the atoll. Dozens of species live in the zone of shallow water above the coral shelf, which is constantly churned and oxygenated by the waves. At the camp, while the frigate birds circle overhead, a team of ichthyologists, scientists who specialize in the study of fish, set about making an inventory of the different species. Philippe Berez and Bernard Serret From the Paris Natural History Museum and Xavier Villamiciana, a student in marine biology, inject formal into the 50 or so species they want to preserve.
So today we're putting together what we gathered yesterday and this morning for the collection. Fish specimens have been placed in collections in the Natural History Museum in Paris, but there have been very few studies. There has just been one American study on the fish here, and so it's interesting to see what there is, not just on Clipperton, but also to compare it with other Pacific islands. It's interesting from a biogeographical viewpoint.
An identification session begins. The returns from previous scientific missions identified 115 reef species, 48 open sea species, and 5 species of shark. But only 7.8% of the species were endemic, an abnormally low rate given the isolation of the island. Clipperton has far fewer species than other similar islands. This could be explained by the poverty of the marine current that feeds it. This current comes from the west and crosses 6,000 kilometers of ocean without passing any other land. The most remarkable thing here is that there are great numbers of miniature morays, barely 5 centimeters long. Naturalist painter Roger Swainston specializes in underwater life. His extremely precise watercolors are often used in identification guides as they show the fish more clearly than a photograph can.
Expeditions like these are great. For me, they're great because there are all kinds of experts in all kinds of fields who continually bring you new things. Every day here I see things I've never seen in my life before. That's the best thing about this expedition. It's the richness, the variety of expertise brought together in one place. It's great.
But it's underwater that this unusual artist comes into his own. Sometimes it takes him 10 hours of diving to reproduce a scene of life on the reef. A painting done by Roger is not a replica of what he sees at a given moment, but an unfolding of events as they happen over the course of a day, something a single photograph could never show. Roger sits so still on his rock, the fish quickly get used to his presence. They don't swim away nervously anymore. This means the painter can capture their behavior, which is often hard to observe. The goatfishes come back time and again to the same area of coral, where surgeonfishes clean off their parasites. As the hours pass, shoals of fish pass by in ever greater numbers. Several hundred meters further on, untroubled by the shoals, a Franco-Spanish team of biologists is searching for organisms that could be used to produce new anti-cancer medicines. Their institution has added Clipperton to a list of 25 marine sites around the world, which will become part of a special research program into unknown species. In the afternoon, the team returned to camp. At this time of day, the din from the birds dies down a little. In the shade of their tents, the biologists get down to classifying their finds. The organisms most likely to yield a resistant, anti-cancerous molecule are the most primitive ones, the least evolved. like sponges and other sea creatures which grow on the rocks. Since these organisms cannot run away in the face of danger, they have to produce toxins to protect themselves from predators. These are the substances which particularly interest the researchers who are hoping to find chemical compositions as yet unknown. Other teams of divers take over. Didier Noirot, a former member of Jacques Cousteau's team, along with his assistant Ian Thomas and Jean Pratt, head of logistics, set off on a new voyage of exploration.
Another dead bird. It's a cruel world here.
There is a break in the coral through which boats can pass to get to the open sea, but it is dangerous and can only be cleared at high tide, so it's only possible to make one dive a day. The divers use special equipment for their explorations, which recycles their air and so doesn't release any bubbles or make any noise. The equipment clearly works. Didier gets close enough to a big manta ray to be able to touch it. It's as if the undersea world had decided to consider the divers as honorary fish. The magnificent ray is escorted by two remoras, otherwise known as suckerfish, on the lookout for scraps from its meals. The manta ray deliberately approaches the reef. Suddenly, its tail is seized by spasms. It's a signal. Straight away, a black jackfish rises towards it and gets in position for a clearly well-rehearsed routine. The jackfish is going to get rid of its parasites. This is unusual behavior for a manta, according to the specialists. The dive continues. Snappers, jackfish, rainbow fish, triggerfishes, big-eyed jacks. One after the other, the shoals of fish appear. But in the eyes of these experienced observers, this apparent profusion is deceptive. Here on Clipperton, there are many fish, but few different species. Is this due to the atoll's isolation, or could it be a sign of an emerging imbalance? A big hammer-headed shark looms up suddenly out of the blue, surprisingly all alone. He's also come to have his parasites cleaned off.
Can you see it? Oh yes, there it is. Can we get past there? We're going to need some room.
Bernard Serret and his team have finished with the fish of the coral shelf and move on to study the species of the open sea.
Well, we were raising the shark line, and unfortunately even the steel lower line is broken, which means a big shark visited us last night. Pity for us, but maybe just as well for the shark. This is stainless steel cable 3 millimeters thick. You've got to be a monster to break that. There you go, that's fishing. Risky business.
The first dives have revealed that there are very few sharks in these waters. This is alarming. 30 years ago, Cousteau saw schools of 500 hammer-headed sharks here. Either the waters of Clipperton have been emptied of sharks by overfishing, or else rising sea temperature and pollution have disturbed the ecosystem. this would mean that the shark's prey move elsewhere. Bernard Serret is a world specialist in sharks and their classification.
Concerning the great white shark, it contains this interesting passage. This fish eats other fish. It is very greedy. It devours men whole. As we have seen from experience, at Nice and Marseille, in the past we caught great whites in whose stomachs we found whole armed men. So we can ask the question whether the world wouldn't be better off without sharks. Well, the answer is no, not at all, because the shark has a very important role to play within the marine ecosystem. They maintain the evolutionary health of the prey on which they feed. By eliminating the weakest, the puny ones, they are selecting. This is Darwinian natural selection at work. By selecting those most fit to survive, they maintain the characteristics of the prey species on which they feed.
Today, there are far fewer sharks in the waters around Clipperton than around Cocos Island, which is in the same part of the eastern Pacific. Here, impressive shoals of white-tipped sharks still gather at night to hunt. Scenes like this could probably have been observed around Clipperton a long time ago. Clipperton has been uninhabited for decades. Many illegal fishing boats visit the island's waters. Only a few craft, like this American boat equipped for big game fishing, have a valid license. Bernard Serret has been invited on board to pursue his study of the marine fauna.
That's a yellowfin tuna. It's called that, of course, because of its yellow fins. The fishermen who come here for sport like it because on Clipperton the fish are more difficult to catch. They're tougher. There's less food here than on the nearby islands. So the fish that survive, well, they've got to be tough. They're smart.
The customers on this boat pay $7,000 each for the privilege of spending 8 days fishing for the Clipperton yellowfin tuna.
Knows how to do that. Just as calm as can be, huh?
Thanks to the sharks donated by the American fishermen, and some that have finally been caught, Bernard Serret and Philippe Berez can get on with an in-depth study of the anatomy of Clipperton's sharks. They will look for possible subspecies or anatomical peculiarities. But they can only find out more by cutting up the dead bodies. It's just like the early days of medicine.
We're going to measure the sharks, weigh them, and take a number of samples. Look at the contents of the stomach, and so on. As far as the general biological study of this species is concerned, we're quite lucky, because we've got quite a few of them.
3 kilos 2.
We do have quite a good picture of the different shark species, but we know very little about their general biology. So we're forced to sacrifice a few specimens to study them. Unfortunately, as things stand, we have no alternative.
These are white-tipped sharks, Carcharinus albimaginatus. I'm separating the males from the females. Here we have a female, and we distinguish them by the pelvic fins. The females have no differentiation in those fins. But now if we take a male, we can see in the area of the pelvic fins that there are two appendages, one on each side, which are the male copulatory organs, which are called the pterygopods, the penises, so it's got a double penis.
Now here we have the shark's brain. What can we see? We can see the parts which are towards the front, the olfactory lobes, and which are connected by these nerves to the nostrils, here. We often say that sharks are living noses, and you can understand why, because most of the brain is taken up with the olfactory lobes. Then you have the eyes, which are connected by the optic nerves to the optic lobe, and here you have the auditory membranes. Underwater, we get information about their behavior, but when we dissect them, we get information about their anatomy. This means I can distinguish between the different species and continue my work of classification.
Philippe Berez is a specialist in fish skeletons. Archaeologists often consult him to identify skeleton fossils.
That's terrific. They're right in the middle of a shoal of fish.
Didier and Ian are continuing their explorations. They make many dives, but all confirm the relative poverty of species in the waters of Clipperton. Suddenly, the fish all start swimming downwards, where the reef drops off suddenly. They go down 20 meters, 30 meters. Snappers, goatfish, all of them. They seem to be responding to some silent but irresistible call. They pay no more attention to the divers. They have a mysterious rendezvous below, in the depths. The divers, captivated, follow the mass movement. At the foot of the escarpment, they pass a gathering of big groupers, but they, on the other hand, are swimming upwards. What's up with them? More and more moray eels can be seen swimming out in the open, and they follow in the same direction. This is very unusual behavior. What event has sparked off this silent migration? And then, it's all over, as quickly as it began. The procession reforms in the opposite direction, and everyone returns home.
I've just seen something I've never seen in my life before. I saw all the fish on the reef, the goatfish, all of them, head for the bottom. And there were morays swimming in the open sea. It's incredible. But I don't know why they did it. I don't know what set them off. It lasted, what, 5 minutes? And after 5 minutes, it was all over. First time I've seen that in my life. In my life. 30 years I've been doing this. 30 years.
Didier was later to learn that he'd witnessed the beginning of a curious ceremony. At one particular time, all the male groupers release their semen. For the other fish, this is a source of food. At the camp, it's time to make an assessment of how things stand on Clipperton. The outlook is not good. Jean Louis Étienne shares his impressions with an audience at the Natural History Museum.
We have seen the Mexican fishing boats. We haven't seen them fishing, but we have seen the boats. They're 70 meters long, and each one has helicopters. These are boats that can put 900 tons of tuna in their holds before heading off again. So this is very intensive fishing. They're really plundering the ocean. Look at those boats. You can make out the helicopter. They're extremely modern boats with sonar to detect the shoals of fish, so the fish have very, very little chance of escaping. What we should do is classify Clipperton as a protected zone, working in concert with Mexican researchers. There's no point making it into a protected area no one's allowed to enter without being fined, because restrictions like that are never respected and impossible to enforce. The only way to protect it is to make it a natural marine reserve, and that's what I'll try to achieve when I get back.
There is one positive point. Bernard Serret estimates that the shark populations are recovering, and 2 different species come to give birth at the atoll. But reglementation is needed. It's probable that intensive shark fin fishing will begin again once the stocks have built up to a profitable level. This fact should convince the authorities to support Jean Louis Étienne's project.